am Brian O'Day, and this is Creepy Canada. On today's program, we'll visit Newfoundland's Carpoon Island, known as the Isle of Demons. This barren outcrop was a dumping ground for those who died at sea, and where, 400 years ago, two star-crossed lovers were abandoned to die. Edgar Allan Poe is one of the greatest writers of Gothic horror. His own death occurred under circumstances that could be grist for a horror novel. Not only is his grave reputedly haunted, but so is the entire burial ground where he lies. Creepy Canada goes south to Baltimore, Maryland, to visit Poe's ghost. We go on to West Virginia to meet the ghostly beauty who haunts the Silver Run Railroad. She's been terrifying engineers for over 100 years.
This is the grave of Edgar Allan Poe, the brilliant author, poet, critic. Known for his macabre tales of death and mystery. But Edgar Allan Poe is not at rest. His ghost is standing watch over his grave. His ghost is also seen near his ancestral home.
I live in the same neighborhood as the Poe house, so I pass by here all the time. A few times I noticed a man sitting at a writing desk in the third-floor window. I thought it was quite odd that he was just sitting there in the middle of the night. I happened to talk to the tour guide at the Poe house, and he said that no one's here in the evening and it's locked up pretty tight, but I know what I saw.
It's so ironic that Edgar Allan Poe, a great writer of Gothic horror stories, has, in death, become like a character in one of his own stories. His ghost is seen in a number of places around Baltimore.
It was many and many a year ago, in a kingdom by the sea, that a maiden there lived, whom you may know by the name of Annabel Lee.
Poe was a true genius. He is credited with inventing the short story as we know it. He is also credited with inventing the horror genre and creating the first detective story. So many of his stories were based on the psychological makeup of the narrator, like The Pit and the Pendulum, The Fall of the House of Usher. These kinds of stories were unheard of in Poe's time period, and they proved to be very popular when they were first published. When Poe moved into this house, the time period was 1832, and basically he was starving. He moved in with his Aunt Maria Clem, his grandmother Elizabeth Poe, and his two cousins, Henry and Virginia. And it was also here in Baltimore that he wrote his first true horror story, a gruesome tale called Berenice. It dealt with premature burial, grave desecration, and mutilation. It was a fun story. However, it got Poe into a lot of trouble, and he was forced to write an apology, and he said that never again would he write a story as gruesome as Berenice, which he did because he knew that's what the people wanted. It was in this time period, 1832 to 1835, that Poe and Virginia became aware of each other. And when the grandmother died in this house in 1835, this family was split up. So it was about a year later that Poe, while living in Richmond, Virginia, sent for Maria Clem in Virginia, and that's where they were married. Unfortunately, Virginia was suffering from tuberculosis, and she died of that dreaded disease in 1847. And Poe, after her death, had a complete nervous breakdown. And he wrote the poem, as some scholars suggest, Annabel Lee, in her honor.
This is the last portrait of Virginia that exists. Fittingly, given Poe's legacy, the portrait was painted from her corpse. Several ghosts are said to inhabit this building. Some seem to be specters from Poe's past, and one may even be Poe himself.
I was in Maria Clem's bedroom, and just as I was about to leave, I saw this heavy-set woman dressed in old-fashioned clothing. And her eyes were just staring blankly. I asked her if she was okay.
Are you okay?
When she turned to me, she just kind of vanished. I can't really explain what happened that day. Up until then, I was the type of person who didn't really believe in ghosts. But I guess it kind of changed my mind.
During the riots of 1968, the Poe house, of course, was closed. But the police were called during the night. The people in the neighborhood claimed to have seen a light moving throughout the house. So what was this light? Well, the police saw it also, and they couldn't explain it.
When we return, the mystery surrounding Poe's death and his abiding fear of grave robbers.
The really sad part about Poe's life is, towards the end of his life, things were turning around for Poe. They were really looking good. He was engaged to a childhood sweetheart. He had this job offer to publish and edit a newspaper with no strings attached. And he died before any of these things happened in Baltimore. This is one of those Poe mysteries that we'll never know what really happened. There are over 22 different versions of Poe's death. The current theory is that Poe is suffering from rabies. There's some suggestion that he was beaten and robbed. There's some suggestions that maybe it was a drug or alcohol overdose, or a combination of these things. We really don't know what happened to Poe. All we know is that he died a very lonely and miserable death. Poe was found in Fells Point, and when they found him, he was obviously in dire need of assistance. His clothing was missing. He was wearing someone else's clothing that didn't fit him. It was ripped, soiled, baggy. It's obvious that he was robbed of his clothing. And they took him to the nearest hospital, which was called the Washington Medical College, where he spent several days in delirium and died without explaining what had happened to him. Thus, we have all of these theories, and that's all they are theories. We can never prove at this point what actually happened to Poe.
Poe was buried in an unmarked grave above the catacombs that were the hunting ground for the city's notorious grave robbers. For a man as obsessed with death as Poe was, the very thought of grave robbers would be cause to rest uneasy. Medicine in Edgar Allan Poe's time was still a new science. Dissection of the human body to study anatomy was thought to be ungodly, a desecration. Doctors wishing to understand how the body worked became conspirators in the gruesome practice of grave robbing.
The Westminster Burial Ground was a popular place for the body snatchers to come. The Daviges Hall is directly behind us, and the school needed bodies for dissection. And this was a perfect location because there was like 3 cemeteries right by the school. And so they had people being buried all the time. So their body snatcher that they had, they would send into the cemeteries and steal the freshly buried bodies. And so if you were burying a family member, the likelihood of it staying in the ground was slim to none because they were looking for freshly buried bodies on a daily basis. This is a cemetery of the Westminster Church and Catacombs. It's haunted by a number of ghosts. Poe is one of the ghosts that is seen here. I myself seen several men and several women down there. So it's not uncommon to come here and to see a variety of different ghosts that haunt this cemetery.
After the break, Poe's ghostly admirer and other apparitions disturbed by our paranormal team. With so much anecdotal evidence of hauntings over the years, the catacombs of the Western Burial Grounds are a prime location for scientific investigation of paranormal activities.
Well, we're standing here on General Swan's grave. As I've stood here before, the man has told me to get out and to get out now. He doesn't seem to like people around his grave, and he's very firm about it. And when he approaches you, you get this creepy feeling in your stomach. Your hair on the back of your neck stands up, and you get these chills. And he's really blunt about wanting you to get out.
We don't really know much about the personal history of
some of the people down here and why they might be restless. But oftentimes when you have disturbing activities going on like body snatching, and you have graves disturbed from their original places, even have a structure built over them, that causes a lot of paranormal activity. Robin, we're about to go into one of the creepiest parts of the catacombs. This is the room that I think has the most activity in it.
Well, I can tell you that my camera just, for a few seconds, actually lost power, and this is a full set of batteries that I just put in here before we came.
That's not an unusual phenomenon in haunted places. Fresh batteries will suddenly go dead, tape recorders will quit working, cameras will quit working. What else are we getting? Are we getting any temperature changes?
Actually, we've got about a 9-degree temperature change as we start to come in here, which is the coldest drop that we've actually had throughout the catacombs so far.
I can certainly feel it. There's an immediate frigid air in this room.
Yes, the energy levels in here are actually quite high. You can feel them, sense them. I mean, your whole body when you walk into here just gives you the creeps.
Down here, Robin, we have an open coffin that's very old. I've often wondered if a restless spirit escaped that grave and has come up to haunt the rest of this room. In most cemeteries, you're not going to find a smashed old coffin, and an empty one at that. We've often speculated that it might be the remains left behind by one of those professional body snatchers in years past.
Okay, we're gonna wanna go back where they had the temperature drops. They said they had some in the back corner. I think that's actually where there's the open crypt. The EMF that's on the left-hand side, the black one, is basically your run-of-the-mill EMF detector that's used by ghost hunters everywhere. EMF is electromagnetic field. And the correlation between paranormal activity and EMF, we believe that ghosts somehow manipulate EMF or create it. So if we detect disturbances in the EMF field in a room, we might have something.
I just got a cold chill. We just had one pass us. I'm getting the name Thomas. So we're getting a ghost with the name Thomas. Thomas, how long have you been dead? He's been dead a long time. We're picking up always long time. It's 1800s.
We could have something happening here.
Absolutely.
Do we
Definitely have a creepy...
Do you have your recorder?
feeling.
Did you go get it?
Good morning.
Okay, can you turn it on and let's do a little question and answer and see if we might get something? We're going to ask a question, and simultaneously we're going to watch both EMF detectors, both the standard EMF and the tri-field, and we're going to see if we get any spikes in response to a question that we ask. And if we notate any spikes, then we're going to write down, does this have time?
Yep.
We're going to write down the time that we have on the recorder. And hopefully when we play it back, we'll hear something at that segment of the recording.
We're picking up another one right now. I feel like something creepy around here. I don't think I like this one. It's kind of, it's a negative. It's not, the other ones are friendly feeling. This one's kind of creepy.
Let's see what we got on here. Let's play it back real quick.
So, if I ask what's your name, how about... Where are you
Sounds like
from?
something there. I think there's a few spots on that recorder that we got something. So we would definitely have to analyze that further on a computer with headphones.
I'm actually getting a little unnerved down here.
You feeling sick?
No, just a little unnerved. I
Yeah.
think maybe we might want to move on a little.
Feeling a little flush feeling also, so.
While the research team's findings were inconclusive, the fact remains that ordinary people visiting the cemetery report that they see, hear, and feel the presence of spirits, and that the ghost of Edgar Allan Poe is frequently seen near his grave. With a final resting place providing a proper tribute to this American literary giant, came a new tradition and another Baltimore mystery tied to his death.
There's an interesting tribute that occurs at Poe's grave on his birthday, January 19th. Since 1949, this mysterious man appears at the Poe gravesite, dressed in black with a white scarf, wearing a black hat. And this person puts 3 red roses and a half-filled bottle of French cognac on the Poe grave. Now, some people say, oh, come on, it's a joke, publicity stunt. No one is doing this. So for a number of years, a group of us, volunteers, spend the night among the dead in the graveyard, hoping to witness this event. Not necessarily trying to catch the person, but just being an eyewitness to this. And we've seen this person, dressed in black with the white scarf and black hat, placed a tribute on the Poe gravesite. In 1985, the person left a mysterious note, and it read, "Edgar, I haven't forgotten you." Now, this is the first time that we've ever received any kind of communication from this person, and actually it wasn't addressed to me or to anyone in particular. It was addressed to Edgar. What did he mean by that? We don't know, but obviously this person had a personal note for Edgar, and maybe Edgar understood what it meant. It's ironic that this writer who wrote about premature burial, murder, torture, superstition, in his death has become a character in one of his stories.
He was a visionary, a literary genius. Edgar Allan Poe lived a tumultuous life, struggling with debt and alcoholism. Was it alcoholism that ended his life at the young age of 40? Did he die of a broken heart from the death of his beloved Virginia? These mysteries are buried along with the great American writer in this Baltimore cemetery.
Thy soul shall find itself alone, mid dark thoughts of the great tombstone. Not one of all the crowd to pry into thine hour of secrecy.
Coming up next, the haunting beauty in the Silver Run Railroad Tunnel. Silver Run in Ritchie County, West Virginia. Looks like a ghost town today, but a century ago, it was a busy railway town. And believe it or not, a town with a ghost even then. Folks around here believe that this tunnel is haunted by a phantom traveler, still lingering from those days. These paranormal investigators have been here before. They felt an overwhelming presence of somebody who tried to scare them away.
My friend Tom Moore and I had decided to go do a little impromptu investigation of Silver Run Tunnel to investigate the hauntings there. Just do a little exploring, just the two of us. It was a warm night, but as we got closer to it, the air began to get really cold. And we were snapping some pictures. And when the light would flash and light up the tunnel, you could see.
It was a very unusual night for us. The tunnel got icy cold real quick, and as we were taking photos, this lady who had long dark hair and a white gown on, she began appearing to us.
And when I would snap my camera, the flash would illuminate the tunnel, and I saw the ghost.
And she began screaming to us as if she didn't want us inside the tunnel. And at that time, Crystal had backed up into the wall, and I had noticed that, and I took hold of Crystal, and at that time I felt that we should actually move on and to leave the tunnel.
I looked over to Tom because he'd reached out and grabbed me, and he saw her too. And that was amazing to know that, this was really happening. This was going on to someone besides just me, that what I was seeing was real. And it was terrifying. We decided we had to leave, that we couldn't stay and investigate it, just the two of us. Right now, we'll have to go back with my investigative unit at some point in the future when I gather up my courage a little bit.
The weeds have taken over the once thriving town of Silver Run, and the rail corridor that shuttle trains between Grafton and Parkersburg has been turned into recreational trails. But long ago, something happened here that none of the old-timers around here will ever forget. They'd seen the ghost of a black-haired beauty, and they've been seeing her ever since.
It was late in August, under a harvest moon. The engineer on B&O's night train was drinking coffee to stay alert. He had done the run 100 times before. Just as he rounded the bend into the Silver Run tunnel, tunnel number 19, he saw a woman dead ahead, standing on the tracks. He blasted the whistle, but she was frozen to the spot. Frantically, the engineer applied the brakes. A second before impact, she flew up and disappeared into the foggy night. The engineer feared the worst. He imagined the horror of finding her body, ravaged by the train, her white skin spattered with blood. He searched everywhere, but there was no sign of a body. Had it been just an apparition? When he pulled into the 6th Street station in Parkersburg, the engineer raced to report what happened.
You wouldn't believe what I just saw. This girl, she stepped right in front of the cab. I swear to God, I killed her. And I didn't find her body anywhere.
It's all right. I've been getting reports about this all night. I believe you.
You believe me? But I didn't kill her? She's not dead?
My grandmother told me, as the story goes, there was a young woman riding the train into Parkersburg to meet her betrothed.
The people of Parkersburg claim that this young woman, whose name is unknown, was riding the train to meet and marry her fiancé. She was a small-town girl and was nervous about traveling this long distance. But she may have had another suitor, a very jealous one, who did not look kindly upon her intended marriage. The conductor eased the young woman's fears and helped settle her on the train, not realizing this would be the last time he'd see her.
Thank you.
Hope you enjoy your ride with us.
The woman's proudest possession was a necklace given to her by her betrothed. It would be crucial to discovering what happened to her.
Now, many say that young lady was murdered.
That night, as the train made its way through the dark, the jealous suitor, it is theorized, took his revenge for being rejected by the woman he loved. Later, when the conductor returned, he told the police there was no sign of the girl. All that remained was her luggage and her diary, which she had been writing in up to the moment of her disappearance.
Others say she simply jumped off the train. For whatever reason, she vanished, and many believe her to be that ghost of Silver Run.
The pale beauty who haunts Silver Run. Our paranormal team finds out.
There was another engineer by the name of O'Flannery. He was of Irish descent, and he heard this story about a woman that haunts the Silver Run Tunnel out in Ritchie County, West Virginia, and how she would stand at the mouth of the tunnel, and the engineers would bring their trains to a stop. And he said, O'Flannery actually said, that no ghost was going to stop his train. He would run her down first. It was approximately 2 weeks later, on a full moon night, when O'Flannery was coming up on the old Silver Run Tunnel. And of course, there she was, standing at the mouth of that tunnel, with the black hair, the white skin, the pale, pale dress. She looked at him and locked eyes with O'Flannery. But O'Flannery did exactly as he promised he would do. He put that train on full throttle, and he drove it toward that ghost of Silver Run. She looked at him and locked eyes with O'Flannery. And as she did with the other engineers, she seemed to go up into the air like a great white bat and was spirited away into the darkness. Quite pleased with himself, about 45 minutes later, O'Flannery pulled his train up to the old 6th Street train station in Parkersburg to see the station all abuzz with excitement and activity. And he said, "What's going on? What's this activity? Why is everyone so excited?" They said,
"Yeah, well, we know what happened, actually.
You would not believe this. Telegram after telegram saying a woman was on your train."
That's right. So the joke's on you now, Buster.
As she was riding that platform through many of these old stations like Cairo, Goose Creek, Petroleum, there were train stations there, and they were telegraphing into Parkersburg, "There's a woman on the train! There's a woman on the train!" As O'Flannery pulls up that engine, that ghost of Silver Run promptly disappeared. Phantom travelers are a universal phenomenon. It's not unusual for spirits to actually haunt planes, trains, and automobiles. It isn't a good idea to challenge a ghost, as O'Flannery did, the ghost of Silver Run. She made a mockery of him. Many years ago, my grandmother told me they were dismantling a part of the Silver Run Tunnel, and when they pulled out some of the bricks, they found the skeleton of a young woman walled up inside. How did they know that it was the skeleton of a young woman? She was wearing a long, white bridal gown. After they gave a proper burial to the skeleton, they said that the ghost of Silver Run was not seen again. However, many people still report sightings of her at the Silver Run Tunnel and claim that she still haunts that area.
Even though they were terrified their first time in the tunnel, the paranormal team decided to brave another visit.
Immediately as we came into the Silver Run Tunnel, the first thing I saw actually visually, this was not an internal psychic impressions as most of mine are, was there was a white flutter, a pale white flutter. It was probably about 4 feet across. It didn't really look human. It had a misting kind of quality to it, but it did reflect light. And I do strongly feel Mary Burkhart's presence in this tunnel right now with us.
What I'm trying to accomplish here is have a night shot camcorder, and I'm trying to catch anything of the paranormal that may be able to be picked up by it that we're unable to pick up with the naked eye.
We're hoping to get some photographs of the ghost, either in the form of orbs, or preferably an ectoplasm mist or an apparition, which is always the goal because it's the most definite proof.
When you get high readings in here in Silver Run and you sight an apparition or a spirit or a ghost, it may be Mary Burkhart. But I also get the feeling there are a lot of other spirits that haunt this particular tunnel as well. So it's a very active place. It's almost become like an energized portal for spirit activity. The other thing I picked up with going into Mary Burkhart's murder is a conductor. And I'm thinking, what is this? What is his place in this murder? The feeling I'm getting is a young relative of his was riding the train, and he abducted and raped and killed Mary. But the conductor plays into this. He was not totally innocent in this, and he knew and helped cover up this murder. I was seeing a pale gray, like apparition, wearing like a hat and a gray uniform.
To the left of the wall.
I heard something down this way. Down this way, right down here. Just a second ago. What is that?
It sounded like it was right in this area.
It sounded like something fell down this way, like someone walking and there was
like someone fell down, but there's no one back there. We rushed down to look, and there's no one here, but it sounded just like someone fell down.
It sounded like a body.
Yeah.
A body had been dumped out. It was over that way. Well, I'm picking up here more on the conductor. Right now in this section of the tunnel, more like the conductor.
As she was talking about the conductor, it spiked up to a 5.
Look how much the temperature's dropped since we've been here. The activity level's really picking up. We're getting a lot of energy. You start seeing your breath. It's probably dropped 25 degrees since we've been here. We haven't been here very long.
Oh, it just dropped a little more.
Definite cold spots.
We're down to 58.
I see a lot of shapes and forms in here, really apparitional shapes and form, gray, white, black, just permeating the whole tunnel. It's like we're being followed by a dozen people.
I keep hearing footsteps coming up behind us.
Whoa.
And my camera just shut off.
We're getting some more temperature drops. It's 55.
55.
Yeah. What's that? 51, 50. The temperature just keeps dropping rapidly. We went from 75 to 50 within 3 minutes. And that's not a normal temperature variance, even in the tunnel. Did you see that?
There's a face. There's a face in the picture. It's a great picture.
Looks great.
In this picture, it looks like there's a face peering out of the safety hole. I took it right up here. And these were safeties for the workers that were, as they were working in the tunnel, or if someone was coming through the tunnel, so they could duck into there and not get hit by a train.
I've been hearing footsteps coming up behind us. There isn't anything down there. Like someone's walking back there.
We had just gotten here, James and I, and we were walking from one entrance to the other, and we had seen some shadow people moving through about the tunnel. One particular incident happened just right over here, where a person was standing about 4 feet away from the wall, and then they just stepped over close to the wall. We walked down there, and there was nobody around.
Tonight, we got a lot of positive experiences in this tunnel. We have a lot of EVPs, we have video, we got some great pictures, some fabulous temperature drops. We heard a lot of things we can't explain, and I think this was a very, very successful ghost hunt.
Does the ghost of Silver Run still haunt the tunnel? There are many who swear that she does. Coming up next, the tale of Marguerite de Roberval, abandoned on the haunted Isle of Demons. On the island of Carpoon in Newfoundland, a local resident was on her way to visit a friend. As she walked along the path by the shore, she felt a strange presence, as if someone was watching her. Then, from the corner of her eye, the woman saw something on a nearby hill. A man was standing there, watching her. He looked to be in his mid-20s and was wearing an old-fashioned sailor suit. He just stood there and watched her, but then he disappeared. He looked so lonely, the woman thought he might jump. But he walked away and disappeared into thin air. The woman was so shaken, she turned back home.
The island of Carpoon at the very northern tip of Newfoundland is one of the most remote locations Creepy has ever visited. It's a place where people from around the world come to escape the hustle and bustle of their crowded cities and their hectic lifestyles. For many, the isolation and solitude is blissful. But the history of this beautiful place tells another tale. One filled with stories of lost souls and loneliness. The most popular and the most forlorn of all is the legend of Marguerite de Ropa and the Isle of Demons. Watch this.
In the spring of 1542, under the direction of the King of France, a wealthy captain, Jean-Francois de la Roque de Roberval, set sail to colonize and spread the word of Christianity in North America. A man of stern and relentless disposition, he came to the new land to stake his claim and spread the word of God. His niece, Marguerite, was a courageous and strong woman, looking for a change from the luxury of the French courts. She pleaded with her uncle to be allowed to join them. He agreed to take her along. Marguerite and her servant nurse joined her uncle and his crew. On the long journey over the Atlantic Ocean, the adventurous Marguerite fell in love with one of the rogue sailors. Marguerite knew her uncle would be angry. She had fallen for a man of poor breeding, and the young lovers attempted to keep their affair hidden, but they were discovered. Marguerite's uncle was furious. Marguerite had disgraced the family name and made a fool of him by carrying on the affair under his watch. When the captain ordered the sailor to be executed by hanging, the Cavalier pledged his eternal love for Marguerite by giving her his sole earthly possession, a beautiful ring. To make matters worse, Marguerite was pregnant. The uncle was further incensed when his niece pleaded for the man's life, declaring her love for the sailor over her family. So he decided to spare the lover his life, and instead banished both the lover and Marguerite to a desolate island. It was a remote place where many were left to die among the hideous creatures that were believed to inhabit the island. It was a place known as the Island of Demons.
Today the island is known as Carpoon, but sailors referred to her as the Isle of Demons. Sailors believed that souls unworthy of entering heaven were doomed to wander this spot halfway between heaven and hell.
As the small boat approached the desolate-looking island, there was no sign of human life. But there were mysterious shapes moving about in the shadows near the shore, believed to be the fiendish imps and angry spirits. The banished trio was given some supplies, a gun and ammunition, and left behind to fend for themselves. While they watched from shore, the ship sailed away. It was the last sign of civilization in their lives.
They built a shelter and survived off the land. Each day they looked to the sea and waited for a ship which never came. But they persisted, and Marguerite had her child.
Strong winds would batter their hut. The nights were long, cold, and terrifying. Strange-sounding gales were relentless, like spirit voices calling. These were not the noises of humans or even wild animals. The sounds were of another world, night after night, threatening Marguerite and her family. One night, the lover, unable to withstand the tormenting calls from the spirits, tried to protect his wife and child. He ran from their hut, but couldn't see what made the sounds. Suddenly, he was attacked by an invisible force, which bit at his skin and raged at his soul. The lover returned, beaten and bruised. It was the last time any of them ventured out of the hut after dark. Together, the lonely souls fought for their sanity and survival. But eventually, the hardships of the North Atlantic terrain were too much for them. Marguerite buried each one in succession. The lover was the first to die. Shortly after, the nurse perished.
Nearly insane from anger and loneliness, Marguerite confronted her demons. She needed to find her freedom. She needed to find a way off the island. Marguerite lit fires, but that only terrified passing sailors more. For seeing the smoke rising from the shore, they thought that it was the smoke rising from the Isle of Demons, the smoke rising from the flames of an eternal hell. Eventually, word of Marguerite's predicament reached France, and a ship was sent to retrieve her. Marguerite was saved. Her uncle, however, suffered a very different fate. He was a hard master, and eventually his own ship's mates mutinied and rebelled against his rule. He found himself marooned, stranded on the Isle of Demons, the same island that had been home to Marguerite.
After the break, Marguerite's legacy and the bond that keeps the lovers eternally captive on the Isle of Demons. In the mid-1800s, some young children were playing on the beach when one of them found a mysterious object. A ring. As she called over to her playmates to examine the find, an old woman named Emmeline, who lived nearby, approached the children. She asked the children what they were looking at. As soon as they showed her the ring, she felt strangely drawn to it, needing to possess it. She offered the children some sweet biscuits in exchange for the ring. The ring became her most prized possession. That night, the woman had a dream. At least she thought it was a dream. Marguerite came to her and said that the ring had belonged to her. In her haste to get off the island when she was rescued, it had fallen from her finger and was left behind. She also said that the woman must always wear it. As long as she does, she will go to heaven.
Word spread about the ring, and eventually a rich man from town heard the story, and he offered Emmeline a vast sum of money, more money than she had ever dreamed of, but still she refused. Denied, the man became angry, and he left in a rage. Apparently the rich man must have felt some remorse after having left in such a rage, and he sent Emmeline a peace offering, a bottle of rum. A few days later, Emmeline died mysteriously and suddenly in her sleep. Was she poisoned? No one knows, but she was laid to rest in her grave with the ring on her finger. 2 days later, in the dead of the night, the entire town was awoken by a strange screaming, many people claiming that it was the sound of Emmeline herself. They rushed to the site of her burial and found the grave open. The coffin was there, the body was there, but the ring was gone.
I wanted to literally escape. I just wanted to find a nice place to find some peace and quiet, do a little writing, re-energize. And just as I was sitting there enjoying this beautiful view, I heard something. So I wasn't quite sure. And then I heard it again. So I decided to go have a look. So I looked around to see if I could find anything. And I didn't really see him at first. But then there he was. And he was kind of there, but he wasn't quite there. You could see kind of right through him. I knew he had to be a ghost. He was calling out. He was actually calling out, and you know, he looked very agitated, like he was looking for someone. He couldn't find him. And you know, I seen him, but I wasn't really scared or anything like that. I kind of felt sorry for him. And then I caught something else. And I looked over and I seen two of them. And there were two women, and they were looking for something. But I couldn't quite make out, and they were obviously very concerned about whatever they were searching. And they spotted me. but they didn't seem scared, or I didn't seem scared of them. But they seemed rather disappointed that wherever they were looking for, I wasn't it. And then they just disappeared. It was really weird. I mean, there must have been some kind of connection between the two of them. They were looking for, either the two women were looking for the guy or something.
Did the tourist get an accidental glimpse into the spirit world? Is the spirit of Marguerite still looking for her missing ring? Are the lovers still trying to find each other? Are they tied to this island as part of a penance they must serve? Eternal captives on this Isle of Demons.
Those were just a few of the ghostly inhabitants of Creepy Canada. Tune in next time for more tales and happenings from the other side. I'm Brian O'Day. Thanks for watching.